There have been a lot of interesting stories floating around the news circuits this week, but one really stood out to me that I want to talk about today. A U.S. representative admitted he actually wanted to shoot Americans, and that's a problem. You're listening to the Closet Conservative Podcast. It is not really a secret that U.S. Rep. Adam Kinzinger is looking for attention. He has alienated his entire party through his actions. He wants to say that he's taking the high road, but let's be honest, that's not the case at all. It's the road that is feeding the continued destruction of our nation. He has taken part of the partisan witch hunt, the January 6th commission that Congress has established. And you can say that it's not partisan, as the Democrats have tried to claim, but the Republicans that are taking part of this, they're not real Republicans at all. He has voted to impeach President Trump when Trump was in office. He even got emotional at the beginning of the January 6th witch hunt, crying about the experience when they were talking with the Capitol officers. It was all an attention-seeking show. Kinzinger continues to feed it, and the mainstream media, well, they love it. This time, it was an interview with the Rolling Stone. Kinzinger said that he had warned people that he knew violence was going to take place on January the 6th. He said that he was dismissed by Representative and House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy. But let's be honest, McCarthy's not the FBI. It's not McCarthy's responsibility to protect the Capitol. It's not McCarthy's responsibility to notify the FBI of those things. Kinzinger should have done that himself. But in fact, the FBI and other law enforcement groups, they knew about the threats of violence on January 6th. So in this sense, Kinzinger made himself just another do-nothing Washington swamp rat. That's what it is. But he took it further. He described how he knew things were bad as he watched the TV. He watched Trump and his family talking to the crowds that day. He watched some of his fellow Republican representatives talking to the crowds that day. They were not inciting violence. They weren't doing anything. They were simply talking to the crowd about the importance of election security, that they were going to fight the election fraud that had happened, and we have evidence that that has happened. But let's stay with the Kinzinger story. He said he went down to the House chamber and started the election certification process. But that after that process began, he was forced back into his office. Now, in those 6 hours that he claims he spent in his office, what was Adam Kinzinger doing? Did he spend those 6 hours attempting to calm people on social media as some other representatives did? Did he talk about the election certification process and how that it was, taking whatever side he wanted to take? Not at all. Did he spend those 6 hours working for the American people, making calls on behalf of his constituents? Did he do work? No, he didn't do that either. Instead, he spent 6 hours in his office and, according to Kinzinger, hunkered down with his gun out. Kinzinger was then asked by the Rolling Stone if he contemplated that he would possibly shoot an American that day, an American that was willing to take a stand for election integrity, for freedom, and the preservation of our republic. Kinzinger said, "Yeah, I thought about it." Yes, you heard that correct. Kinzinger said he actually contemplated and thought about shooting Americans that day. A U.S. representative was openly contemplating shooting Americans, the very people he was elected to represent. Rather than doing the work of the people, attempting to find any election fraud or irregularities that have come out since the election, rather than proving the security of our elections to the American people if he wanted to build trust in the elections, or rather than encouraging Americans that our republic would overcome the radical left's attempts to destroy it, Kinzinger was sitting back, hunkered down, as he claims, thinking about shooting Americans. Now, why would you be in fear of Americans if you were actually doing what the Americans wanted you to do? I mean, I know the things that happened at the Capitol that day, and I know that there are some that may have been scared, but the people weren't there to take on those that were doing the will of the people. That wasn't their plan. I don't even think the majority of the people went there for any kind of violence at all that day. But you got to think about this. Why would Kinzinger be scared? Because he was not doing what Americans elected him to do. For 4 years, he fought against Donald Trump. For 4 years, he fought against the agenda that Americans wanted. For 4 years, he had been working to make a name for himself to help him after he decided to leave Congress. Perhaps Kinzinger was upset because he wasn't like many of his other counterparts in Congress, able to secure millions of dollars in personal wealth from special interest groups. But this was all part of Kinzinger's plan. He has announced that he's not going to seek re-election in November. He plans to move on to the next stage of his life, which I have no doubt means that he will be a fake Republican on CNN that is willing to criticize the conservative movement and actions across the country, because that seems to be what happens with them all. Or perhaps he just wants to go back to Illinois so he can target practice thinking about killing more Americans. Above the Kinzinger situation lies a bigger issue, though. Congress believes that Americans should be afraid of them and that they are above the people they are elected to represent. Now, not all of them, but I think there could be a majority in Congress that feel that way. Kinzinger believes himself to be part of that elite group of Congress, just like Pelosi, Schumer, Biden, AOC, and others, that you only deserve what they want you to have. You only deserve the government, what the government can control and says that you deserve. And what they believe you deserve is to completely submit to government control. Kinzinger, just like his Democrat friends, believe that you do not deserve freedom, but you do deserve to submit to their will. If you're not willing to accept their ultimate rule and you want to stand up for what you believe in, they have a problem with that. They want to put up a fence. They want to keep you out of the Capitol. They want to keep you out of the Capitol area where you, an American, are entitled to be. This is your government. It is by the people and for the people. And now they want to contemplate shooting you. Unfortunately, there was no contemplation with Ashley Babbit. They did shoot her, to which Kinzinger and his Democrat friends have no problem. They did not mind the killing of Americans that day. And it's been evidence that they don't mind the killing of Americans in other situations either. Think about Benghazi. Think about Afghanistan. And in our very own nation's capital now with the loss of Ashley Babbitt's life. Americans should never have to fear those that should be representing them. They should not fear oppression. They should not even have to fear death at the hands of their own government. The government is by the people and for the people. Unless you have the mentality of the radical left, like Adam Kinzinger. The Closet Conservative Podcast is a production of The Liberty Loft. Copyright The Liberty Loft 2021. You can find more shows and information on our website, www.thelibertyloft.com, or on any of our social media channels. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to the podcast, leave a 5-star review, and share the podcast with your friends.